It's not in your hand. Can you put it
Hello
in
everybody,
your
welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor. Today we're going to be doing an updated tier list for every role as a patch 1025B. And this is probably going to continue to be the patch that we're going to be on until January 8th when the fresh season starts. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. Stop by the stream. Starts around midnight Eastern Standard Time every night. Usually goes till about 3 or 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's a very friendly, chill community. We'd love to have you. And we have lots of content like this always coming out as well with fresh patch notes and tier lists for each new patch. And then lots of topical guides like best one trick, how to micro better, how to macro better, champion guides, how to get better at Rakan, Nami, there's dozens and dozens of other champions and tons of other content. Doing a new Cyberpunk playthrough, lots of Total War Warhammer, Witcher, lots of single player stuff if you're into watching that as well. But anyways, be sure to check all that out. And it is near Christmas time. It is Christmas Eve. My daughter's in here hanging out, so you might hear her in the background. But yeah, let's go ahead and get in here. So I did a detailed support tier list video. So be sure to check that out. I'm not going to rehash that right now. I did about 45 minutes on that. So it's Nami, Bard, Thresh, Rakan, and Janna. So mostly just playmaking supports that are very flexible, most of which can use Mandate plus Staff of Flowing Water really well, and then Thresh can use Locket plus Redemption for pretty good team fighting. So, and then Janna is just high statistical champion, big win rate, good at split pushing. It's pretty good at a lot of different things with some decent lane pressure. So we have Janna sneaking in there as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about ADCs here. So the first one that I want to talk about is probably one of the least obvious ones for a lot of people, and that's going to be Tristana. Right now, let me pull up and why she's so strong. She does have one of the highest win rates out there right now. She's got a 53.4, so even higher than Jhin, higher than Miss Fortune, higher than almost everybody, with a decent play rate too of 7%. So it's not like she's some obscure ADC. There are definitely some people that are playing her, but she's not going to be nearly as popular as some of the top 4 or 5 most popular champions. There are a couple of things she has going for right now, and a lot of this has to do with the runes and items that have been buffed and are really popular. So Hail of Blades in combination with her explosive charge with the reset mechanic on her rocket jump is what's making her really strong right now. So she does a ton of early game damage, just 1 point in this jump. So like at level 2, whenever you get this, it's going to be 95 damage, which is a ton, and it can stack up and I think do even more than that. Oh no, that's the stacking explosion. So it's 95 damage on the jump, and then the maximum physical damage if you jump on somebody early on. So if you jump on someone at level 2 and you put the bomb on them and you get max stacks the bomb, it's 154 damage plus the 95 damage right here plus 110% of your bonus AD, which you're not going to have a ton early, but you're going to have some, is basically a lot, right? It's going to be over 50% of somebody's health. It's going to be 250 to 300 health at level 2. So, and that's not including just like normal auto attack damage. So that's why Hail of Blades is so good, because you land that jump, you get the slow, you get those 3 attacks off really quickly, and then if you get the 4th attack on the bomb, you actually get a reset and you get another 95 damage. Then you're talking about 400 damage at level 2 if you get a double jump off. And then as soon as you get a kill on one person, you can reset and jump onto the other person and make sure that you kill the support. So she just snowballs really, really hard early on if you get this jump. And it's 900 range too. It's a very long range. And she scales super well. I mean, she's always scaled well. Just the main thing that has held her back is that she's pretty short range early on. I think she's 500 or maybe 525. 525 early on, and then her range scales over time as you level up. But she also can't control the wave very well. The wave has to explode whenever she kills somebody, and so she pushes, but it makes it kind of hard to last hit. If you're trying to last hit under tower with her, it's a nightmare, but even just normally pushing, trying to last hit in the early game makes it difficult to CS, and it's going to force you to push into them and maybe overextend if the jungler is going to gank and camp you. But the way the meta is shaping up right now, most junglers are going top, for level 3 ganks around like the 3-minute mark or so. So you have a lot more alone time in the bottom lane. And the meta, I think, is just really good for push and roam, type of stuff in the bottom lane. So she just fits really well with that meta. But another thing that's come in really strong lately is Kraken. So whenever you get the Kraken, it's the 3rd hit does the true damage. And so that works really well with Hail of Blades, right? Because you just jump on them, you get 1, 2, 3 Kraken proc, explosive charge proc, get a reset, you can jump again. Then you can use her ultimate, which also has really high base damage. Again, so 300 base damage on an ultimate. That's more than most mages for a base damage ultimate. It's 120 seconds. And you can use this to peel. You can use this to, sometimes push people back into your team if you're super far ahead. You can use this to execute people. So it's a really good ability. So she's just a very flexible champion. She has a ton of damage early. She scales really well late. She turns into a long range, just sieging machine later on. But she also has that all-in potential early. And she just works really well with Halo Blades and Kraken. And that's really where the meta is right now with Kraken. And then a lot of people are going Stormrazor after Kraken, just so you get so much upfront burst damage from the Stormrazor proc to the 3-hit Kraken to the bombs, your ultimate, resets Ws. She just has a lot of built-in damage just off of items and her abilities. So really strong champion. And like the interaction with her W as well, if you haven't seen a Tristana meta in a long time, is if she starts her rocket jump, then she's immune to CC whenever she jumps it because it buffers it. So even if like Blitzcrank is gonna hook her, if she's in the motion of jumping up, she can ignore a Blitzcrank hook and still jump away. And it's a 900 range jump. So if you get good on Tristana, you can get yourself out of a lot of different pieces of CC. Ashe is going to arrow you, no problem. Buffer it right when the arrow is going to hit you. You still get your jump off. Now, I believe that you will be stunned. Any duration that's left after you complete your jump, you're still going to be stunned for that duration, but you get to start and complete the jump. Now, if they hit you while you're mid-air, so if you're already in the air and Blitz hooks you, then he can pull you out. So it's a really bizarre timing window, and it's like some kind of squirrely coding from like Season 1 with Tristana. But it does allow her to get through a lot of other pieces of CC, which is really weird. And she can still use her abilities while she's jumping. So whenever you jump in with your W, you can go ahead and throw the bomb on them and land a couple of auto attacks. While you I don't know if it lets you auto anymore. She uses a dash or a blink ability. But okay, so she can flash and land on you, I'm pretty sure. I'm not 100% about that interaction, but I know that she can throw the bomb on you while she's jumping in. So it's a laptop landing next to the trash can. But anyways, so I think that's very strong. So if you want to play her, just go for Halo Blades, Kraken, and just start snowballing really hard. So I think she's good. And she takes towers really quickly, too, because that explosive charge works on towers. So just overall, really, really strong champion right now. I think that she's the most underrated ADC, mostly because of the rise of Kraken and the nerf of Eclipse. And the nerf to Jhin and things like that have made her a lot stronger. Okay. Jhin is still going to be very strong, though, so he has been nerfed. He's no longer 54% win rate. He's no longer 40% pick rate, but he's still 31%. He's still going to be a really strong champion. Just does a ton of upfront damage. And, that's a theme with a lot of these ADCs, with the exception of maybe Kai'Sa, maybe Ashe, is you want stuff that just has really high ability damage so that there's not as much of a burden on you to position and land lots of auto attacks. Because that's historically one of the hardest things about AD carries is learning how to reposition and manage your threat and still land a lot of auto attacks and not drop autos while you're repositioning. That's one of the really high skill check things with the AD carry role. But when you have Jhin, you're basically a caster that just masquerades as an AD carry, right? You do so much damage off of your auto attacks, your W, your ult, that you don't really have to worry about positioning too much. And you get a ton of free attack speed or free movement speed whenever you ult somebody. If you do get Eclipse, which I believe is still the best item on him, you can reposition, or you can go Gale Force. I think it's pretty good. I'm actually not sure which one has the higher win rate. Let me see. I didn't look that up, but he's good with either one. It looks like most people are going over toward Gale Force. Yeah, Gale Force is way better now, but that allows you to reposition and gives you even more upfront damage. And you want to be really strong early, because in most games you're probably only going to get to 2 items, maybe 3 items max. The meta is kind of fast right now. It's like 25 minutes or so, I think, could be like an average game. So anyways, he's still going to be strong. Don't need to say much about him. People are probably super familiar with Jhin, but it's just a combination of either Gale Force or Eclipse with the Collector that just makes him really OP. And a lot of people, looks like Rapid Fire Cannon and Stormrazor are actually pretty close in power to the Collector. You do not want to go Infinity Edge second. That's a troll build because you don't gain any extra benefit off of this until you have 3 items. I mean, I guess it gives you high attack damage and crit strike, but you really want to be going Collector. This item is super OP. Whenever you have your ultimate plus Dark Harvest, you just get so many procs that can put them into that 5% execute range. So I would heavily recommend just going Collector second with Jen. So super strong champ. Is going to still be good. Miss Fortune, going to be strong. They haven't nerfed her directly. They did nerf Eclipse. She might also have switched over to Gale Force. No, she's still going Eclipse. Eclipse has a great interaction with her ultimate because it does such high base damage that getting to ignore some armor is a really big deal. And she's probably one of the best Collector users in the game just because her ultimate, the damage checks so often and does so much damage that it's really likely you're going to get that last hit and you're going to be able to get that execute on people whenever the ultimate's channeling. And kind of like Jen, you don't really have to worry about positioning while you're auto attacking. You just pretty much hang out, really far back, use your E, which is like 1,000 range or something, and then just press R and just delete people in team fights. And you'll see this with a lot of the other champions that we're going to mention other roles, but it really is a team fight meta right now. There are still some tanks that are strong. There are some split pushers, but it's mostly people are going to be grouping as 5. There aren't as many like heavy poke champions. Assassins, with some exceptions, are going to be a bit weaker right now, despite the memes and what everyone was saying at the beginning of the season. Assassins really haven't been that great outside of Kha'Zix in a lot of roles. There are some, like Fizz, Kha'Zix, Zed sometimes. Like, there are a couple, but by and large, it's been mostly a tank meta in the preseason. Tanks have been nerfed a little bit, but they're still good. So anyways, team fight has been the name of the game. Is still going to be a very strong option, and Miss Fortune's going to be one of the best at that. She just has such a great combination. Just press R, even if you're really far behind, the base damage on that's going to be massive. So really, really good off of no items, 1 item, and 2 item. So I think she's going to be really strong. Now Kai'Sa's another one that has been creeping up. Now she's probably one of the biggest turnaround stories. Her and Tristana are kind of the new age, the Halo Blades, Kraken build champions, and it's kind of tough to say. She does have a high win rate right now. I feel like this one is a bit more of a skill check because people do all sorts of wacky builds on her, and if you build her incorrectly, it can dramatically lower your win rate. Halo Blades, similar to Tristana, you have a really good 3-hit combo. It's not 3. I think you have to get every 5th hit on her passive does the extra damage, but it does allow you to put up a lot of upfront damage and bursts, so you can Q in or ult in on somebody who gets a stack on the back line. You ult in, Q, and then get 3 hits with Halo Blades, and you're probably going to trigger your passive. Also, with the fact that there is a lot of other CC out there right now, does add up extra stacks of your passive on people for you to trigger. So she works really well with a lot of CC that's going on. And then that allows you to trigger Kraken. Now, interestingly enough, her... Pull this down a little bit so I can get to this bar. There we go. Her win rate actually goes down over time. And I would not suspect that would be the case because you would think that she just scales so well with attack speed. But for some reason, her win rate does go down over time. It's probably because of this Halo Blades build. But in general, Kraken is going to be really strong on her. It looks like Gale Force is actually low-key really strong as well. So we'll see. Now notice that Manamune is actually quite weak right now. And this is what I'm talking about. If you don't have the right runes, if you don't have the right items, then you're going to have a substantially lower win rate. So if you're going something like Manamune or you're going something like Immortal Shield Bow, you're going to be at a big disadvantage versus someone who goes Gale Force or someone who goes Kraken. Another item that is going to be super strong right now is going to be Ronin's Hurricane on her. Now, this is getting nerfed next patch, and so stay tuned. Look at the patch notes for this. That's going to be a big deal. Most champions do not like the extra 25 AD at the price of, having to pay 600 or 700 more gold than something like Stormrazor, Rapid Fire Cannon, anything like that. So, but it does matter on Kai'Sa because she needs that 25 extra AD threshold so that she can evolve her Q. That's always this little cat and mouse game, is you have to figure out how to get to like 80 or 85, whatever the number is, bonus AD to get your Q evolved off of like 1.5 items. So Kraken plus Pickaxe gets your Q evolved, and you can turn that Pickaxe into Ruinant's Hurricane. So we'll see what happens next patch. But for right now, that's the build. It is very good. You can also go Collector if you're ahead and you just want to assassinate people. I don't remember if that has a Pickaxe in it or not, but it has 55 AD, so presumably you can get 25 somewhere in there. You probably just get a Serrated Dirk, and that might cover it. I can't remember. But anyways, it is really good. You do not want to go Nashers, and you do not want to go Gensus. There are a lot of people, I've had some in my games, that go for these meme, like, old school builds that are like 2 years old, where it's like Nashers Tooth, Death Cap, stuff like that. It's really bad. Do not go that build. It's not like it has a 0% win rate, but it's still going to be significantly under a lot of the other options. So it's like 3% under Hurricane, which is probably going to be the strongest item. Now you might be wondering, why would someone go Kraken first? Those are the people that are going Manamune into Kraken typically, which is unnecessary. You used to go Manamune back in the day because it would give you the fastest evolve when it was 2,400 gold, but now that it's 2,600 gold, and there's just way more powerful items that you can have access to early, like Kraken plus Hail of Blades, you really don't want to be doing that. It's the meta has changed. It's just not good anymore. I'm not as familiar with Gale Force, but it's a super strong single item power spike just because of the how much extra damage that active puts on somebody. So it's a really good snowball item. And then typically going something like Infinity Edge is going to be a really strong third item. Okay, so she's good, and then Ashe is the final one that I'll mention. We'll move on because I don't want this to be much more than an hour, and we're trying to cover 4 different roles here. Ashe is still going to be really strong. Now, I will say her win rate is not as high, and the main reason is because of the meme builds. I'm just going to say it. It's because of the meme builds, and y'all know what I'm talking about. The Mandate Ashe that everyone is saying is the best way to go. It is not. It's pulling down her win rate tremendously because there's a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of for fun players going for that build. And it's fine if you want to have fun, but a lot of people, don't have as much fun when they're losing games. That's what the All Caps videos don't tell you. They say, hey, this is really fun. Go play it if you want to lose some games and have fun doing it. They never throw that out there. They always throw it out like, oh, there's this new build that's OP. You're going to win a lot of games. And the truth is, you're not, right? Because if you look at this, Mandate, you rush Mandate, it's the only mainstream item, that has a negative win rate. Right, if you get Mandate first, it's a 49% win rate versus Shield Bow's 52, Manamune's 51, Kraken's 53, Gale Force is 53. Notice Gale Force on almost everybody is really strong as a rush item. I actually didn't look at it on Trist. Maybe we should look at it on Trist. I think Kraken's the way to go, but now if you can Gale Force to reposition your W to land on somebody, that could actually be really strong. I think it said, I'd have to try that in the testing tool, but I think it said you can't do that. Because typically if you try to jump on somebody with W, they're going to dash or they're going to flash if they're in danger of dying. And so if you can flash to follow them or Gale Force to follow them, but I doubt it's going to let you do that. But anyways, far, far lower win rate, right? And then if you get into second item, so if you go Manamune first and then Mandate, it's still going to be weaker, right? It's 54%. Ruinant's Hurricane and Blade the Ruined King are both going to be higher. So it's not that it has a 0% win rate. It's just that it's going to be weaker than a lot of the other builds potentially that are out there. And the main reason is it just does, like, AP is bad. It's just a bad stat on her. Her ult does have a 100% AP ratio, but nothing else does, right? And you might think, okay, well, let me look this up real quick. You might be thinking, oh, well, I can just do a lot of poke damage off of my W, right? But look, they nerfed it on this patch. If you're looking at some of these older guides or older All Caps videos, this thing used to do 90 damage on its W on the first activation trigger. And this is why a lot of people are doing this, is you can just spam your W and it triggers this basically whenever your spells hit somebody. So it's like, okay, cool. I could be doing, what, by the time you get this, maybe 45, 47 extra damage on my Ws. But if you look at Ashe's scaling, she has no AP scaling on her W, right? And her auto attacks obviously have no interaction with AP. But if you look at Volley, it has a 100% AD ratio. So if you're trying to think about poke, if you think this through, it's like, okay, I could be doing 45 extra damage on my Ws. That sounds cool. It's like, okay, but what if you just went something like Gale Force? This has 60 attack damage. This has 60 or 100% of your total AD. So it would do 60 extra on-hit damage if you had Gale Force, right? So even if you're going for on-hit poke, AD still scales with the W, right? You don't have to have Mandate's little cute passive to have an interaction with it. You still have an interaction, right? If you just get normal AD, it still helps your poke if you want to deal with a poke build. Now you might say, okay, well, it doesn't have ability haste on it, or it doesn't have mana regen or HP. You don't need, like, the mana regen and the HP are nice, but they're not going to help you do damage. The ability haste, there is some argument for that, but I would say if you want to go for like an ability haste kind of build, you're better off just going something like Manamune. That's going to give you 15 ability haste, and at least that gives you a lot of AD at some point. And the bonus interaction with Muramana is pretty nice. Once you get that completed, doing the extra damage on your physical damage abilities can be pretty good. But anyways, that's my case here. So Ashe is still really good. Her ult is great engaged. W is really annoying harass. She has very clean long distance auto attacks in the laning phase. Brings a lot of utility to team fights. So still going to be a very strong champion. It's just the meme build is dragging down the win rate. If people just did not have Mandate, I mean, if you just look at this, her win rate would probably be closer to like 52 or 53% if people were building normal builds instead of the meme builds. But because of the meme builds, it's dragging down the win rate, bringing her closer to like 50, 51%. But anyways, non-Mandate builds I think are still going to be really strong on her. Okay, now going towards mid laners. So this is always the hardest role to call in terms of tier list, just because there are so many different things that can be good, and it just really depends on your experience on different champions and what your team needs. But there are a few that definitely stand out. So Galio, in my mind, is going to be the strongest one right now, and the reason why is he's just brings so much to the table. Like, he can do really strong damage, but he also has a lot of CC with his Justice Punch, his taunt, and that ultimate, man. It is so hard to make any plays on anybody whenever there's a Galio in the game. I say this as someone who plays a lot of playmaking supports, you know, Rakan, Thresh, or whatever. You always have to worry about that Galio ult whenever you're going in. And they did nerf him a little bit on this patch. I don't remember... let me see if it has under history what the nerf was. But it doesn't matter. He still has 53, 54% win rate, something along those lines. Here we go. Okay, so his cooldown is increased by up to 4 seconds on his Shield of Durance. That's his taunt. And I don't remember. I think you max this second. So, like, basically for a lot of the game, it's going to be like 2 seconds slower. It's fine. I mean, all you need is one taunt in a lot of these fights, and it's going to be over a lot of times. And people had been rushing Proto Belt on him so that you could get closer into taunt range. And I'm not sure if people are still getting that or not. Yeah, they are. So this is a really good interaction where you can Proto Belt forward. It gives you that extra movement speed. So not only does it get you closer to them, but you also get 50% extra movement speed for 2 seconds. And when you're charging your taunt, of course it slows you, but this movement speed is going to offset that slow by a lot. So you can just Proto Belt forward, you know, start charging up your taunt and probably be able to land a full charge taunt on somebody. So that's a really, really powerful interaction. Gives him a lot of extra burst as well. And then it's that combination of landing the taunt, Justice Punch, and your passive, and someone's probably going to get deleted. So he's just very strong champion. Like I said, brings a lot of utility. Great against other mages. He has that passive magic shield, but just really good at that team fight meta that I mentioned before, because he's got the damage, he's got the CC, he has the semi-global ult, he has the protection, he's tanky, he's just everything. He's just way too strong right now. So I think that Galio is very, very good. He's got great wave clear. Super strong champion right now. Okay, Anivia is another one that and really good into a lot of assassins like Fizz and things like that. I think you're going to have a pretty hard time against him. I don't know. Strong against mid laners. I don't know where Fizz is on here. Yeah, he's got a 53% or 54% win rate against Fizz, Zoe. The only thing that he doesn't have a positive win rate against are basically a lot of AD champs. So like Pantheon, Talon, Aatrox, a weird pick. Anivia is probably the most notable one that he doesn't have a high win rate on. And we'll talk about that right now. So Anivia is the other one that's really strong right now. She actually got hot nerfed as well, but she's still doing extremely well. Almost a 54% win rate. A lot of places will probably put her as like number one, but I still like Galio a little bit more just because of that ult, just because you can influence those side lanes so well. If you get ahead, just push mid and just use your ult mid or top. It just really, like I said, makes it very difficult to engage and to fight against any of these like global ultimate type of champs. Now, Anivia doesn't roam as well, but she just has a really high sustained damage output, and they gave her several buffs on this patch. They did dial some of them back, but a huge one was the mana cost on her E. I think went from like 110 down to like 60 or something. So she's not nearly as dependent on blue, because that was a big thing in the past. Was basically she had to go a ton of mana items, and she had to have blue on top of that. She's just a super mana hog. And now that has been fixed to where she still needs some mana. You're still going to go for, a tier item plus a big mana item, but you can actually make it without that. So the hot fix, the damage was reduced by 10 on the Flash Frost. And remember, this is doubled whenever someone's frozen. So instead of doing 340 damage off of a 4-second cooldown ability with a 1.0 AP ratio. It might even be a 1.2 AP ratio. Now it's only, or instead of doing 360, now it's only 340. So it's still a lot of damage. So what did they do to increase her on this patch? They gave her, her auto attacks are faster, and they're just a lot smoother. It makes it a lot easier to last hit. The chill thing didn't matter. The pass-through damage, I believe, is lowered. Or no, it's increased. So if you actually get the explosion on them, it was more damage. And then, they changed a lot of the stuff in here. Lowered the mana cost at higher ranks by 20, which is significant. Missile speed is way faster, so it's a lot easier to land your Flash Frost. And then the Frostbite, I think this is one of the biggest ones. Okay, so it wasn't the 110, but it was all the way up to 90. This is what you max first. So 90 damage just for an ability you're supposed to spam, and they reduced it to 40. What? It's like over a 50% reduction. And way, way more damage. Max damage increased to the 360 from 300, so it was like whatever that is, 20% more damage. And then the Glacial Storm, you can just use it a lot more frequently just to tap people with damage. So just huge increases damage. So she still does what she does in general. I will say, in terms of she has super strong wave clear, really strong just team fighting disruption with that wall, with that R. It's just so difficult to move around her. She's extremely good into melee champions that require, running at people. Nunu, she really hard counters with that wall. Very, very good against Nunu. But even things like Darius, Garen, just all of these bruisery type of champs that need to be able to try to run at people, she just completely shuts that down. Very good against things like Nautilus as well, with just anything where that wall is going to disrupt their game plan. She's going to be solid. So yeah, just very strong wave clear, very strong team fighting. But the thing that has sort of changed or evolved that people have done with her is they've negated her one of her major weaknesses, which is her movement speed. So a lot of people are running Phase Rush on her. Now, strangely enough, it seems like she falls off later in the game too, which is weird because it seems like she would do very well into the scaling, but somehow she loses more when the game goes longer. Now she's an early game champ, no longer the, scale up with your double mana items for late. Now apparently she loses. But Comet still has a higher win rate. But this Phase Rush build, especially if you use it properly, is so strong because if you just hit people with, R, auto attack, E, you get this extra ability to just reposition, and it just makes it almost impossible for these melee champions to get on top of you because you've got your R, you've got your W, you've got your stun off of your Q, and now you can run a million miles an hour. And then you take Ludens as well, which gives you very strong poke damage and gives you that extra movement speed amplification. And there's stuff like Mandate flowing around and things like that, which is going to give you even more movement speed. So Historically, big weakness. She can't move. Well, now she can. Just put on your track shoes with Phase Rush plus Ludens, and you can just run all over a lot of these melee teams. So things like Galio and things like Darius or Nunu, Maokai, Thresh. A lot of these champs, you're just going to be able to dance circles around them. So very, very good control mage right now. Excellent at team fights. Excellent repositioning with this movement speed build. So you just want to try to get to, you get a tier early, start stacking it, but you really want to get that Liandry's as soon as you can. Or I guess like Ludens, actually. I don't know. They both have high win rates, but it depends on the matchup probably, how many melees they have versus ranged. The Liandry's is going to put up a lot of damage if you go for the double burn, but that Ludens, especially if they have a lot of melee champions, can be really strong. Either way, just get your mythic, get your tier, and then your second is going to be the Azakana Mask or whatever, the Demonic Embrace. Now, I will say, as I always say, with a lot of Hourglass champions, Hourglass is almost always a significant loss in terms of win percentage. That's just how it is. On almost every champion, it's going to be a loss. So if you look at her, it's only like a 54, almost a 55% win rate, but the mask is going to be, 59%. So you really want to be getting that mask most of the time. And if we, I guess we could go back and look at Galio really quickly as well. Proto Belt's obviously where you want to be first, but I haven't looked at this beforehand. It is a little bit higher here, but the mask is still going to be better. Mask is still 2% higher, right? And if you get something like, it actually is better than Deathcap, which is kind of surprising. I thought Deathcap would be higher, but there are several items that are going to be higher than Hourglass. It's not as bad on Galio. It's actually decent. It's better than Morello. But it's a little bit worse than Banshees. It's worse than Horizon Focus, but these are like very low pick rate items. So you still want to do the mask, Demonic Embrace most of the time, but it's okay. But just be careful with that item because it always seems like you can make the big play. You can do the YouTube, outplay highlights and stuff like that off of Hourglass, but realistically, the vast majority of the time, it does not change the outcome of the fight. You're still going to die. If you get into an Hourglass situation, 4 times out of 5, 80%, it's not going to change the outcome. And you're giving up a ton of damage to do it. When you're thinking you could have the extra burn damage off of Demonic Embrace or the AP off of Deathcap or just any number of other things that you could be getting in your build, you're paying a lot for that. Now, if you already have Seekers, you're against a Zed, you're against a Pantheon or something like that, and you just need to complete the item and you're already priced into it, okay, sure, you might want to consider it, but against like stuff where you're not getting a lot of value out of that armor, it's probably not going to be that great. Okay, and then Malzahar is the other major control mage, and you could put Victor in here too, but I like Malzahar a little bit more just because he has that guaranteed CC. He just brings a lot to the table, and he works really well at these items. You'll notice this is a common theme too. The Proto Belt was a little different, but stuff that can use Demonic Embrace is going to be very strong right now. So Liandry's Demonic Embrace, good wave clear. It's the same story as with a lot of champions. Really good wave clear with the E, with his Q, his minions, and just that double burn damage is very good against a lot of the tanks and the bruisers going on. And you always have that point click R, which is going to be super, super strong, especially for ganks, right? As soon as you hit 6, you're always a threat, right? If your jungler ever comes middle and they don't have Quicksilver Sash, and almost nobody wants to get Quicksilver Sash. And that's a huge thing, too, that I think is really underrated on someone like Malzahar and even on, like, Mordekaiser to a lesser extent, is games are over so fast at, like, 25 minutes that people have a hard time getting past 2 items. And if you have to stop what you're doing and get a Quicksilver Sash, that's going to be supremely punishing right now in this meta because you're not going to be able to complete the items. And the items are so important to complete, right? If you can delay like Galio's Proto Belt, if he has to get a Quicksilver Sash, for example, and you can delay that Proto Belt for like 5, 6, 7 minutes because he had to stop and get that Quicksilver Sash, that's a really big deal. He's not going to operate as well because Proto Belt is a massive, massive spike in his power, and most champions have a huge power spike at 1 and then often 2 items as well. So if you can just delay him a little bit, that's still going to be very, very good. And if they don't do it, they're going to die every time that's up, and you can call your jungler in for a gank. So The one knock on Malzahar is he doesn't have a great rune right now. You know, you've got Aerie. You could go something like Phase Rush, I guess. Aerie does give you a little bit more poke in the laning phase, but runes basically suck on him, and they kind of always have. There's just not a good rune for him. So, you know, you take that with a grain of salt. It doesn't have as much synergy as some of the other champions have. But I think you could go Phase Rush on him. I don't know what the win rate on that is. It's probably a little bit more than Aerie, but I think it's actually significantly lower. I guess you could go Comet. I don't know. Runes are kind of bad. Runes are kind of bad on him, honestly. But the items are good, and he does bring a lot of utility. And I just like it for that press R. It just completely locks down assassins. So he's not going to do as much damage as Anivia or Galio in team fights, but you know, with the R, with the silence, he could still put out some respectable damage. Victor, on the other hand, is another one that I was, you know, torn about. He did get nerfed a couple of patches ago, or maybe it was on this patch, but he still brings a lot of damage, good wave clear, just excellent with Ludens. So he is very strong. I just had him a little bit lower just because he doesn't have the CC that Malzahar does, but he is still very good. So you could substitute Victor in for, you know, another control mage is good in here. Or maybe Orianna, if you're really good on Orianna. I think she can be good too, although she does have like a 48% win rate, so not looking super strong right now. And then on the more assassin side of it, Fizz is still really good. Fizz just finds a way, man. Protobelt's very good on him. And his matchup into Galio and Anivia, I imagine, is not going to be stellar. But against a lot of other champions out there, he's great. And just the fact that he's untargetable just makes it so difficult to peel him. And tell you as somebody who, you know, plays a lot of these, supports that have a lot of CC, your Rakans, your Threshes, your Bards, stuff like that. It's very, very difficult to deal with a Fizz. Because if he lands that fish on somebody, there's almost nothing you can do. Right, because he can just jump in with his E, and then he's gonna land on top of him. He's gonna blow him up. Like there's, you know, almost nothing you can do other than you have Guardian, and if you have a shield or something, maybe you can pull him through it. But it's just so difficult to peel him off of that back line. If he gets ahead, you know, he's gonna have his way with your back line. So that's why I think Fizz is still going to be really strong, just because of his ability to go untargetable and its interactions with a lot of other common matchups in mid lane, and his ability to access that back line and how difficult it is to peel him. Echo's another one who is going to be really strong right now overall. He just kind of does a lot of stuff, right? Like decent wave clear. Now in the laning phase, it can be kind of rough. You can get poked out. But, you know, as the game progresses, he has decent wave clear, tons and tons of mobility with his E for basically double jumping around. His R is like a second health bar that can also nuke somebody if you land it. And then that W, you know, giving you a massive shield and also, you know, potentially stunning people for, you know, 2 seconds. Just brings a lot of utility to the team fights as well. So he can't start the fights as well as some of the other champs. He doesn't have as much roaming as someone like a Galio. But he does have a lot of outplay potential. He's very good against other assassins. And it just always feels like there's a situation where you can turn fights around. So, really difficult champion to play to his like maximum potential. But overall, still going to be very strong. And I guess that's it for mid. Pantheon's probably the most conspicuous omission. And I'm not fully sold on this yet. I know he does have a really high win rate right now. They did do some changes to him that potentially buffed him on this patch. He's a very good early game snowball champion. So if you can snowball and get ahead, you do have that point click stun. So if your jungler comes in, you can probably kill him. Then you do have your ultimate to be able to roam around to the side lanes to make plays. I just feel like I feel like he falls off like really hard late game. Yeah, I mean, if you look at that chart, he just goes into the gutter. I mean, I know a lot of the other champs were falling off, even like Anivia, but it's not that steep. A lot of times, like he just like completely disappears at 20 minutes. So he loses like 6 or 7% win rate at 20 minutes. So I don't know. He's okay. He's just too risky for me and just doesn't bring enough to the fight. He does have a stun. You know, his little spear thing can block damage for people. He does have some stuff, and he does have some good roaming. So I guess I could, you know, make him an honorable mention, but I just don't really I've never really liked AD mid laners too much, just because you almost always have AD top laners and you have AD carries, and then a lot of your junglers are going to be AD as well or low damage. So I just like having some kind of heavy AP threat on your team, just so that the enemy team has to build magic resist. And I feel like there's at least a certain percentage of comps, maybe 20 or 30%. I don't, that's just a random number, but there's some like significant number of comps where if you don't have a heavy AP threat middle, it can really throw off your balance, and it's gonna allow them to not have to build magic resist and just stack armor or stack damage, and it's gonna be a big problem. So he's just, I don't know. He's okay. He does have a high win rate, but I just think compositionally and sort of tempo wise, he's just kind of risky for my taste. Okay, let's get into Nunu here. So we do need to get into the jungle here, because we do need to get through these last two roles in the next 20 minutes or so. So Nunu's still going to reign supreme. A lot of the other tanks have fallen off significantly in the preseason. Amumu just got like chain nerfed over and over again, and they nerfed all of his items. They just said, Amumu, you cannot exist, basically. So Amumu has gone from like 1 or 2 patches ago at 60%, now he's 48%. So he's completely gutted Amumu. Zac didn't get a direct nerf, but he's having a really hard time as well because of the nerfs to Sunfire and some of the other tank items. You still have some of the more popular junglers still struggling. You've got Lee Sin's a little bit better, but not a lot. Graves, Kane, a lot of these champs are still under 50%. So what's hot right now? What's doing well? Well, Nunu is still going to be, super strong, top of the list. Just very safe clearing in the jungle. He's very healthy. He has excellent ganks early on, and that's what sets him apart from most other tanks outside of like maybe Rammus or something. He can really get in there and turn fights around. It's so hard to avoid that snowball. Even if you have it warded, if you don't react immediately when he starts rolling through with that snowball, with a lot of champions bot lane, he's going to at least get your flash, if not more. So, excellent ganks early, very good clear, very good base stats and scaling for a tank. Excellent objective control, so you're just gonna get the dragon or the baron. In most smite fights, if you learn how to time that properly, it's almost impossible to get objectives from you. And just really, really good scaling for a tank, like great AP ratios, great health ratios, and so he has several different itemization options. I still think that Sunfire is the way to go on him. You can try to go for like I have seen some people trying to go for Night Harvester. I just think it makes you too squishy. So they have nerfed Sunfire out. I mean, maybe something like Frostfire Gauntlet could be interesting. Feels like that's a bit overkill on the slows. Something like Mandate could be interesting. The Chem Tank could be interesting. Fun fact about this Turbo Chem Tank. How long does that last? Okay, it lasts for 4 seconds, but if you activate this while the snowball is going on, then the snowball keeps that same movement speed boost for the entire time, because it always snapshots your movement speed. Now, I've wondered if you like Proto Belt, if that would work or not, but you just don't overthink it. Just do Sunfire first item. Then you have some good options for second item. You can still go for Deadman's. The Mask is actually pretty good too. Demonic Embrace. I find myself getting that sometimes as a second or a third item. But puts out decent damage, has good ganking. The one thing about him is he kind of has a hard time accessing the backline for a tank. Like Zac can jump to the backline, and some of these other tanks will have ways to get there. So if they have something like a really fed Vayne or Kai'Sa or whatever, and they have like some decent peeling, someone who can soak that snowball coming up front, you're not going to be able to get to the Vayne or the Kai'Sa. So you have to have someone who can get on that back line. You have to have an assassin mid laner or an assassin top laner or just something else to help you out if you get to late game, if their AD carry's fed, or some other really annoying mage like an Anivia or just something like that. A Victor, one of these zone of control mages, can be a huge problem because Nunu's just not going to be able to touch him most of the time. So he's very good at the Clown Fiesta. If there's a lot of assassins running around, there's not a good, tightly organized front line. If you're just able to get that snowball on the back line, he can be really good. But he can have a problem against the Fed hyper carries because they will melt him late game. So very, very good, really strong, respectable champ. But if you did have to, find a little chink in his armor, that's it, is that he's going to get outscaled and he's going to get blown up late game by the hyperscalers, the Kraken people. Okay, next one that I'll mention here is Kha'Zix. Now, Kha'Zix kind of has an opposite problem. He can get to that back line. He can delete the squishies really, really well if he gets fed late. it's just kind of hard to get that snowball rolling early under some circumstance because he does not have great ganks. His ganks are pretty bad until he gets invisibility. He doesn't have a lot of CC. His W has a surprising amount of slow on it that he does clear pretty quickly. He does take objectives super fast, like Dragons and Barons. Maybe not as fast as Nunu. It depends on how fed he is. He can take those really well. And then he does work extremely well with Duskblade, obviously. So if you get on that Backblade, you get the invisibility. That is good on a lot of Assassins, but it's particularly good on Kha'Zix because that's going to reset your Unseen Threat, which is the bonus damage that you get when people haven't seen you for 1 second. So this new iteration of Duskblade was just made for Kha'Zix. It just works so well with his kit and just provides so much extra damage and utility. He's just a pentakill waiting to happen if he gets fed. So still going to be super, super strong champion. You just have to find those moments where you can go in and just start getting a couple of those pick-off kills and just really leverage your flanking and that invisibility to get that first kill on your fights. But yeah, super strong champ if you get ahead, completely worthless if you don't do anything with him. But he just has so much potential, and usually I don't like those types of champs. I don't like recommending those champs where they have to snowball or they're worthless. But Kha'Zix, the snowball is just so powerful if you get ahead that I figure it's worth mentioning. It's also worth mentioning that Gore Drinker's pretty good. I haven't seen a build with that, but I'm assuming maybe if you I don't know, you just want to be going Duskblade most of the time. Prowler's Claw can work too, but that's better at getting that first kill. But Duskblade's just better at getting a bunch of chain kills. So anyways, I think Kha'Zix is still going to be very strong. Hasn't been a secret. He's been really good. Even in the heavy tank meta, he was still had a decent win rate. And now that the tanks have been nerfed a little bit, that's good news for him. Now, the other one that's really come up almost out of nowhere is Ivern. Now, Ivern did get a lot of big buffs on this patch, like really big buffs. And this is kind of cool if you'll notice that it's like basically 3 different, and if you include Fiddlesticks, who's the next one, 4 different types of champions are all like really good in the jungle. So that's a pretty diverse meta if you look at the top side. Now there's a lot of junglers that are still struggling, but that's, you know, a tank, an assassin, an enchanter, and a mage basically that are all like top picks in the jungle. So at least it's diverse near the top. And even like in mid lane, it's kind of diverse. It's like control mages and assassins, ADCs. You have your early game with the Jhin, the Misfortune, then you have kind of the scaling with the Kai'Sa, Ashe, Vayne. I didn't mention Vayne, but she has a high win rate. In support, Nami, Bard, Thresh, Janna. So there's a pretty good diversity of champions, honestly, as far as the meta's going. It's not like all of one type of champion is OP. It's like there's some good stuff for any playstyle out there right now, so that's good. But Ivern hasn't been meta for a while. In terms of like popular and powerful, and he's still not like that popular right now, but he's just very strong. He did get the direct buffs. I don't remember, I'm not gonna look up exactly what it was, but I remember his shield got a pretty big buff. I think the cooldown was like 1 second lower, and it shields for like 10 or 20 more than it used to. But he's just really good with a lot of the items that are coming out right now. So he has a very nice clear. I think the change to Gromp is very good for him. So now he gets that free extra health and mana back in his own jungle. He doesn't have to fight over the scuttle to get that. So that means that he can actually show up to the scuttle and be ready to rock. You know, if the laners come in, he's not going to be at like 2% health going for scuttle anymore. He's still not going to be able to like 1v1 Kha'Zix or something probably over a scuttle. But if he has laner help, you know, he might be able to turn some fights around. So if you just do a good path, if you're on, you know, blue side, just like wolves into blue, like you just tag wolves, blue, Gromp, and then just go back, and then smite red, tag raptors, go back, grab those three buffs, and you'll still have one of your smites ready for scuttle. So he's got a really good clear path. The Gromp helps out a ton. And then Moonstone, the changes to Moonstone are really good for him. Moonstone was nerfed a little bit last patch, but it still has a very high win rate on some of the champions that use it. Just fits perfectly with this kit, right? He's stalling out. He's constantly, you know, shielding people. Daisy's hitting people. He's auto-attacking. He's queuing. So he's just spamming all these abilities, just trying to really just disrupt and just gum up fights and make them last forever. And he's just going to out-attrition people. And Moonstone just fits perfectly with that playstyle. So super strong item on him right now. He can still do Mandate, and that does have a decent win rate. But keep in mind that if your support or if you're Ash or whatever, anyone else has Mandate, it can't trigger twice. It's going to have that cooldown for any Mandate user. I'm pretty sure, not 100%, but I'm like 99% sure if Ash W's or whatever and triggers Mandate on people in a team fight, and then the rest of your team hits those people, then your Mandate is also going to be on a 6-second cooldown, right? That's any Mandate procs. So they step on each other's toes a lot. So you got to keep that in mind, that can feel kind of bad. But if you do Moonstone Renewer, a lot of other champs aren't going to get that, first of all, and second of all, I think that multiple Moonstones can still heal people. So that's one of the reasons also why Moonstone is so good. Now, you got to be careful. You got to coordinate if you have an Enchanter down there. If you have a Nami or you have one of these other champs, you need to see which item you need to be getting, because Staff of Flowing Water is not... It's okay if you have it on multiple people, but because the base stats, it's still going to give you like 90 AP. But, obviously that Rapids passive is not going to apply to multiple people. So just be careful if you're Ivern, right? Just coordinate. Don't have both people do Mandate Staff of Flowing Water, because that's going to be feels bad. But maybe if they go Staff of Flowing Water, maybe you could go Redemption or something like that second. Or maybe you could go Ardent Censer if they go Staff of Flowing Water. Or maybe they can go Ardent Censer and you go Staff of Flowing Water. So just coordinate that with your Enchanter if you have one in the bot lane. If you don't, then, get whatever you want. But yeah, super versatile, just basically like a pretty fast farming early game, lots of good ganking, hyper scaling Enchanter in the jungle. So super strong. It is helpful if you do have a tank in the top lane or just somewhere top, mid, support. If you have some kind of engaged champion, he's going to be a lot better. If you have just a bunch of squishy champs on your team, it can be a little rough, although you can make it work with him. Okay, and then the last little bit here, we're just about out of time. Fiddlesticks, still going to be very strong. I think he's a good Proto Belt user. A lot of the other champs have been nerfed out. He has a 54% win rate right now, which is very strong. And it's a common theme with a lot of stuff. Really good team fighting, really good CC, really good wave clear in the jungle, pretty strong ganks. That's kind of where you want to be right now. It's just all about that team fight dominance. So he uses Proto Belt very well. You ult in, you Proto Belt, allows you to reposition and get close to people and fear them. And then just the Azakana Mask or whatever, the Demonic Embrace, is going to be very strong. Now you'll notice Hourglass, once again, like I keep saying over and over again, that's a popular second item, 55% win rate. Demonic Embrace, 7% higher. 7% higher. That is a very, very large number in League of Legends. So do not get Hourglass second. It is a trap. It is a bait item. I say it over and over again. Get the mask. Even after its nerf, it's still going to be better. Even Void Staff. Void Staff's like 63% second item. There's just... Zhonya's is probably the biggest bait item in the game, honestly, aside from like maybe Manamune on a lot of people. But anyways, Fiddlesticks, excellent mage. And then Hecarim, he has fallen down a little bit. He's no longer 54%, but he's still going to be pretty good. Just his ability to gank, like turbo gank early, he's kind of weak in like the super early game. But once he gets his Divine Sunder, it does give him some tankiness, does give him some extra damage. And he scales pretty well over time, I think, although once again it looks like he just, who does well over time? Like everybody falls off over time. But anyways, he is going to be really strong. One nice thing about Hecarim versus someone like a Nunu is he can get to that back line. Like he can ult, he can disrupt, the Kai'Sa and the Vayne at least a little bit on that back line. He can threaten them. So that is something where he comes in and he's a bit stronger, like maybe third or fourth item, and Nunu's going to be better at one or two items, I think. But anyways, Hecarim's still going to be good. Okay, top lane, last 5 or 6 minutes here. Now, I have Wukong up here, and you don't see a lot of Wukongs right now, but he does have a high win rate overall. It's almost a 53% win rate, and he just kind of fits that team fight mold really well. He plays very well with Gore Drinker, which is a very powerful top lane item right now. You just have Gore Drinker plus Ravenous Hunter. It's going to give you 40 ability haste, which is going to be somewhere around like 28 equivalency in CDR. So you don't have to, you can still get a lot of AD, and you can get a lot of Spell Vamp to keep you alive, or like Lifesteal type of stuff, Omnivamp type of stuff. So you get AD, you get the Lifesteal, and you get ability haste. All of those are things that he wants. That gives him more survivability and burst and more capability to make plays with his ultimate more often. So excellent team fighter, as you know, the same thing I keep saying about all these champions. Great at team fighting, pretty good scaling. That's just really what you want in this meta right now. So super strong champion. There's not a lot to say about that overall. Now Malphite's the other one who is still a pretty good tank top lane, good win rate. Once again, excellent team fighting. Now he doesn't do a lot of damage later on. The nerf to Sunfire has hurt him a bit, but he's still going to be pretty high impact just because of his. Even if he's behind, you just press R, you make a play. That's it. So Wukong still needs like maybe one item, maybe two items before he really starts hitting people hard. Whereas Malphite just like immediately like hits people hard, but then falls off a lot more as the game progresses. So pretty, early game champion. Not a lot of outplay potential early on. You're probably going to lose a lot of lanes, unlike Wukong who has the potential to win some lanes. But excellent choice, especially if you're auto-filled top or you just don't play top a lot. He's going to be a good, straightforward, pretty simple, solid choice in a lot of matchups. Camille's the high skill cap fighter that I would recommend, and there are several other ones you could play instead of her. I mean, you could play Fiora, you could play something like Tryndamere. I think Tryndamere's still pretty weak. They did buff him, I think, maybe this patch. You could play Riven. You can do well if you're good on other fighters, but Camille is the one that really gets my attention, and usually if you want a split pusher, if she's anywhere close to being meta, that's the one that I'm going to recommend as far as fighters go. It's because she does have versatile itemization. She can go for the Trinity into Ravenous. I wouldn't be surprised if she still can do like Sunder or Gore Drinker. Gore Drinker actually seems pretty bad, but she can do Sunder to be a little bit more tanky as well. But the thing that I really like about Camille is her ultimate. You can just lock down. It's excellent for ganks. You just ult in. Most champions can't deal with that, and it just pretty much guarantees you kills every time that's off cooldown whenever your jungler's in the area, kind of like Malzahar. And she just does super well off of 1 and 2 items. She can duel almost anybody late game, even tanks like a Shen, like a Garen and stuff like that. She can dominate if she gets ahead early. And she just has such great mobility with the E that whenever you're split pushing and threatening towers and, doing all that Camille type of stuff, you can get away so easily. So it's very hard to run you down. So she doesn't bring a lot in terms of team fight, but she is going to be one of the best pure 1v1 split pusher type of threats in the game. And it's just your ability to lock down people with that ultimate for forced 1v1s or for free ganks is just really, the main reason I would pick her over some other options out there. Like Fiora is very good at dueling, but people can run away from her. She doesn't have any CC. Fiora might be marginally better at team fights just because if you do get a kill, then your ult will heal people for a time. One nice thing about Camille, though, if she does get a flank on that back line and you're able to ult their AD carry or something like that, that is massive because they're not going to be able to run away, and it's really, really hard to peel that. So that is nice if you do get a power flank. That is a nice contribution. Now, someone like Vayne can knock you out of the circle and break it, but most AD carries are going to have a hard time dealing with that. Tristana is another one who can ult you back through your own barrier and break out of it, but most AD carries are going to have a hard time breaking out of it. Okay, Darius, almost always going to be good. It's hard to find a meta where he's not going to be a powerful champion in the top lane, right? And everybody's familiar with him. He just gets kills. He gets those resets. Just does a ton of damage. Great against tanks. Great against squishies. The fact that he can run Ghost and Flash just makes it extremely difficult to get away from him. And it's like, if he gets on you and you're just trading punches with him, it just feels like he's just going to win most of the time. So you have to kite him, and it's really hard to do that with a lot of the circumstances, especially with things like Staff of Flowing Water going around right now on a lot of supports, which is going to increase your movement speed, and Mandate, which is going to increase your movement speed when you hit people. There's just a lot of movement speed buffs that are just in the meta floating around that are going to help him out a ton. And the final one that I'll mention, so we'll keep this under an hour, I have Shen. He has fallen in win rate a little bit, but I still think he's going to be good. I'm not sure about his 1v1 against Camille and Darius and Wukong and things like that. Strong against, let me see what his weak against is here in the top lane. Kayle. Yeah, I forgot about Kayle. Kayle has kind of fallen off a little bit, but she's still decent. It looks like his win rate is 52% against Camille. Malphite's 52%, Ornn's 52%, so he's pretty good into a lot of the other tanks out there. But has that global ultimate, really good at team fighting. Your ult combined with something like a Galio can be massive, or any of these other engaged champs, and you have really good protection with your E and pretty good 1v1 potential as well, with the type of itemization that he gets. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Have a good day, and we'll see everybody next time.